How to make an avoidant feel safe enough to love. Let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone who seemed to pull away just when things were getting real? Have you felt that deep ache of wanting to be close while they built walls? Listen to me, avoidant people aren't cold. They're not unloving. They're not broken. They're guarded. And not because they don't care, but because somewhere along the line they learned that closeness could mean pain. If you want to love them, truly love them, not in the way that feels good for you, but in a way that feels safe for them, then you've got to understand this isn't about pushing harder. It's about inviting trust. Real safety is not built in a single moment of romance. It's built in consistency, in patience, in presence without pressure. You can't demand vulnerability from someone who learned that being vulnerable led to hurt. What you can do is be the space where their nervous system can exhale. You want to love an avoidant. Here's the key: stop making it about fixing them and start focusing on becoming someone they don't have to protect themselves from. Because behind that silence, that withdrawal, there's a scared child who didn't get to feel emotionally safe. You don't melt those walls by pounding on them. You melt them with warmth, with stillness, with respect for their pace. You give them time not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to love someone where they are, not where you wish they'd be. So stop trying to rescue them. Stop waiting for them to change so you can feel secure. Be the lighthouse. Not chasing, not pulling, just glowing steady until one day they realize they've made it home. Most people misunderstand avoidant individuals. They see the silence, the distance, the withdrawal, and immediately interpret it as disinterest or worse, rejection. But what they fail to see is the real engine underneath that behavior. Avoidant individuals are not cold. They're not heartless. They're not incapable of love. They're cautious, and that caution didn't come from nowhere. It was learned. It was earned, usually the hard way. You see, everyone has a survival strategy. For some, it's to connect quickly, to cling to the relationship, to feel safe through closeness. For others, the avoidance, the strategy is to protect themselves by pulling back. Not because they don't want love, not because they're incapable of deep emotion, but because somewhere along the journey of life, they learned that intimacy wasn't always safe. That getting close came with a price. That love could turn into control. That opening up could be used against them. And so they adapted. They armored up. Now, here's what most people don't realize. The avoidant person often feels just as deeply, if not more, than someone who leans in easily. They're not disconnected. They're just deeply afraid of being overwhelmed, of being engulfed, of losing themselves in another person. Their caution is a protection of self, not a rejection of you. But when we don't understand that, we personalize their behavior. We start telling ourselves stories. They don't care. They're not trying. That must not be enough. And the moment we go down that road, we stop seeing them and start seeing only our unmet needs. And if we're not careful, we begin to apply pressure, to demand answers, to push for closeness before safety has been built. Think of it like this: an avoidant person lives in a fortress, not because they want to be alone forever, but because they've convinced themselves that staying inside is safer than stepping out. They might peek over the wall. They might even open the gate slightly. But the moment they feel rushed, criticized, or misunderstood, that gate slams shut. Not out of malice, out of survival. So if you're loving an avoidant, your job is not to scale their walls with fireworks and declarations. It's not to stand outside and yell louder. It's not to shame them for not trusting faster. Your job is to understand, to shift from judgment to curiosity, to realize that their distance isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting them. That's not coldness. That's caution. That's learned behavior. That's an emotional nervous system doing its best to keep them safe. And the truth is, if you can hold space for that, if you can stop taking it personally and start seeing the pain behind the pattern, you become someone they don't have to guard against. You stop being a potential threat and start becoming a possible ally. That doesn't mean tolerating unhealthy behavior. It doesn't mean abandoning your own needs or boundaries, but it does mean meeting the moment with maturity instead of reactivity. It means recognizing that real intimacy is not built by forcing someone out of their shell, but by being safe enough that they choose to come out on their own. You see, when someone is avoidant, they're not trying to hurt you, they're trying not to get hurt. That's a very different thing. They've likely spent years learning how to suppress emotions, how to stay independent, how to rely on themselves so they don't have to risk relying on someone who might let them down. So when they begin to care, when the stakes get real, that's when the fear gets loud. That's when the instincts kick in. That's when the old wiring says, back up, don't get too close, don't lose control. Understanding this shifts everything. It stops you from feeling like you're doing something wrong. It helps you stop asking, why aren't they opening up? And start asking, how can I make this a place where they feel safe to? That's where love begins, not in getting what you want immediately, but in offering what the other person needs to feel safe enough to offer you their heart. Avoidants aren't cold, they're cautious, and caution can dissolve in the presence of real safety. You can't fake that, you can't rush that, but you can become that, not by overgiving, not by chasing, but by being emotionally grounded, calm, and deeply attuned to what's happening underneath the surface. Because once an avoidant person feels safe enough to really trust, their love runs deep. Their loyalty is unwavering, and their connection, once earned, is profoundly meaningful. But to get there, you have to stop reacting to the wall and start being the reason they no longer need it. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to connect with someone avoidant is mistaking urgency for intimacy. They think that if they just express their love clearly enough, passionately enough, frequently enough, that the other person will finally let their guard down. But love isn't unlocked by intensity, not with someone who's learned to associate closeness with pain. If you want to build trust with an avoidant, you need to understand this truth. Safety is not created through pressure, it's created through pressure and consistency. Avoidant individuals are constantly scanning for threat, even if they don't show it. They're not just watching what you say, they're watching what you do, how you react when things get emotional, how you handle conflict, how you respond to their need for space. They're testing for one thing: are you safe? Not in a sense of physical safety, but emotional safety. Can they be around you and still feel like they have autonomy? Can they exist in the relationship without being swallowed whole? You can't answer that question with a grand gesture. You can't solve it with a deep conversation or a 3-hour emotional download. That's not how their nervous system works. What you say today matters less than what you do repeatedly over time. It's not your promises they're watching, it's your patterns. Pressure feels like control to someone who is avoidant. It activates their fear system. You're not their love system. The moment they feel like they're being pulled into something before they're ready, the defenses go up. And the more you try to chase that closeness, the more they will retreat. Not because they don't like you, but because their internal alarm system is screaming that something's not safe. This is the paradox that most people struggle with. The more you push, the more they pull away. But when you show up consistently, when your presence is steady, when your mood isn't dependent on their level of closeness, when your energy is calm instead of demanding, that's when something starts to shift. Their nervous system slowly begins to relax. They stop looking for escape routes. They stop bracing for disappointment because you've proven through your actions that you're not a threat, that you're not there to smother or control or demand more than they're ready to give. Consistency communicates safety. It's saying, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not trying to force you to be somewhere you're not. That energy is powerful not because it's passive, but because it's secure. When you show up in that energy, you give them the space they need to begin lowering their guard. Not because they're being pressured to, but because they want to, because they feel safe enough to. This doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean waiting forever for someone who never meets you halfway. It means understanding that real intimacy with someone who's avoidant doesn't come from dramatic emotional pushes. It comes from being a steady presence in a world where they've only ever known emotional unpredictability. You're not trying to convince them to love you. You're giving them the experience of being loved in a way that doesn't activate their defenses. That's what consistency does. It creates a rhythm. It builds predictability. And for someone who has always braced for the other shoe to drop, that kind of emotional stability is revolutionary. They might not thank you right away. They might not even acknowledge what's happening. But internally, something is softening, something is healing, because love for them isn't about speed. It's about safety. And safety doesn't roar. It doesn't push. It doesn't rush. It shows up over and over again, calm, steady, unthreatening. That's what opens the door, not a battering ram of emotion, but a gentle knock repeated until the fear inside says, maybe this time it's okay to open. When you're in a relationship with someone avoidant, the instinct to persuade them can be overwhelming. You want to explain your heart, to show them that you're trustworthy, to convince them to let you in. You pour words into the space between. You, trying to bridge the distance with logic, emotion, and reassurance. But what you need to understand is that avoidant people don't open up because you argue well. They open up because they feel safe. And safety isn't built through persuasion, it's built through presence. Avoidants don't trust easily, not because they're stubborn, but because their nervous system is wired to equate closeness with risk. They've often experienced emotional intimacy as a trap, something that began warm and ended in pain, suffocation, or betrayal. So when you start trying to explain why they should open up, why they should stay, why you're different, what you're really doing, even with the best intentions, is creating more noise, more pressure, more emotional intensity they aren't ready to metabolize. What they need from you isn't a case to be made. What they need is your presence. Your calm, grounded, stable presence that says, you don't have to do anything right now. I'm not going anywhere. They don't need your words to pierce their armor. They need your energy to tell their nervous system you're safe. Being present doesn't mean being silent or emotionally detached. It means being attuned. It means being fully there without trying to shape the moment into something more comfortable for you. It means holding space for them to exist as they are uncomfortable, uncertain, distant, and not flinching. When you do that, when you can stay emotionally available without pushing, you offer something most avoidant people have rarely experienced: the opportunity to stay connected without the cost of losing themselves. That's everything to someone with an avoidant attachment style, because what they fear most isn't just being hurt, it's being consumed, being smothered, being expected to perform intimacy on a schedule. The moment they sense that your presence is conditional, that you're there only as long as they give you what you want, emotionally they retreat. Not to hurt you, but to protect themselves from a dynamic they believe will eventually trap them. But when your presence is steady, when you stop trying to force closeness and instead allow space for it to emerge, that's when they start to feel safe enough to come forward. Your stillness becomes more powerful than your words. Your patience becomes louder than your requests. Your willingness to be with them in their fear rather than trying to fix it becomes the most persuasive thing of all. Presence tells them, I'm not here to take from you, I'm here to see you. And when someone avoidant feels seen without feeling judged or pressured, they begin to soften. Not because they're being convinced, but because they finally feel they're not alone. This isn't easy. Presence demands that you do your own inner work. It requires that you regulate your own anxiety, your own need for control, your own urge to make something happen. But if you can do that, if you can show up not with an agenda, but with your heart open and your expectations relaxed, you become the one person they feel they don't have to defend against. That's what heals, not the perfect argument, not the emotional plea, just your presence grounded, warm, and unwavering. The quiet strength that says, take your time, I'm here. For someone who's never known love without conditions, that kind of energy speaks louder than any words ever could. When you care deeply for someone with an avoidant attachment style, it's tempting to slip into the role of the fixer. You see the walls they've built, the wounds they carry, the moments they pull away, and a part of you wants to rescue them from all of it. You think, if I just love them hard enough, stay patient enough, give enough, maybe they'll finally feel safe, maybe they'll finally change. But here's the truth you must accept: if you want to love them in a way that's healthy, you are not their healer. You are not their therapist. You are not their transformation. You are their safe place, or at least you have the opportunity to be. Healing isn't something you can force onto someone, especially not someone who is wired to see closeness as a potential threat. Avoidant individuals don't open up because you've diagnosed their trauma or analyzed their childhood. They open up because over time they begin to feel that being close to you doesn't require them to lose themselves. They begin to experience a relationship that doesn't demand more than they can give. That's the medicine. That's the transformation. And it only happens when you stop trying to heal them and start becoming a space where they don't feel like they have to be anything other than who they are. When you try to fix someone, even with good intentions, it creates a power imbalance. It says, you're broken and I'm whole. Let me lift you out of your dysfunction. That energy may seem helpful on the surface, but to someone avoidant, it only confirms their fear that relationships are a trap, that emotional connection always comes with pressure, that love is conditional on improvement. They don't want to be someone's project. They want to be someone's partner. They want to be trusted to navigate their own internal world, even if they do it slowly, quietly, and in ways you don't fully understand. Being a safe place means offering acceptance over analysis. It means resisting the urge to rush their growth. It means showing up with calm instead of critique. You're not responsible for their healing, but you are responsible for the energy you bring into the relationship. Your job is not to unlock their heart, it's to become the kind of presence where unlocking starts to feel like an option. And let's be clear, being a safe place isn't passive. It takes strength to sit with discomfort without trying to fix it. It takes emotional maturity to not take their withdrawal personally. It takes deep inner security to offer space without abandoning your own needs. But that's the kind of space that creates the possibility for healing. When they start to feel that you're not watching them like a project, when they realize you're not keeping score or pushing them to be more open than they're ready to be, they begin to relax. Not because you healed them, but because you gave them a place where healing could begin. A place without judgment. A place without pressure. A place where their nervous system can rest. The irony is, the moment you stop trying to be their healer, you become far more valuable in their journey. You become someone who honors their pace, someone who listens without fixing, someone who can sit in the silence without rushing to fill it. That's what makes you magnetic to someone who spent a lifetime avoiding closeness. You don't need to rescue them. You need to respect them. You need to trust their process. You need to become so grounded in your own worth that you can hold space without grasping for results. Because at the end of the day, the greatest gift you can give an avoidant is not transformation, it's safety. And from safety, all transformation becomes possible. Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style means learning how to dance with patience. It means realizing that their timeline won't match yours and that trying to rush emotional closeness before they're ready doesn't create connection, it creates resistance. If there's one truth you must learn and embody, it's this: if you don't respect their pace, you will lose their trust. Not because you did something wrong intentionally, but because to someone avoidant, feeling rushed feels like a threat. Avoidant individuals are incredibly sensitive to emotional pressure. The moment they sense an expectation they can't meet, or feel you're disappointed in how slowly they're opening up, they don't respond by leaning in, they respond by pulling away. It's not punishment, it's protection. Their pace isn't about how much they care, it's about how safe they feel. For someone avoidant, vulnerability is a huge risk. It means exposing parts of themselves they've been trained often by life, by early experiences, by betrayal or loss to hide in order to survive. And when you come in hoping to move things along, to get them to talk more, commit more, emote more before they're ready, what you're actually doing is confirming their deepest fear, that relationships are places where their autonomy will be stripped from them. Respecting their pace means stepping out of your own ego long enough to see the relationship from their nervous system. It means asking yourself, is what I'm doing helping them feel safe or just feeding my own anxiety? Because real love, the kind that builds trust and earns loyalty, doesn't operate on force. It operates on permission. And permission requires patience. This doesn't mean waiting endlessly while your own needs go unmet. It doesn't mean tolerating emotional avoidance that turns into neglect. But it does mean understanding that trust is earned over time, not through words, not through emotional intensity, but through consistent, respectful presence. It means being able to say, I'm here, I care, and I trust that when you're ready, you'll come forward. That level of calm creates an emotional atmosphere that invites openness instead of demanding it. When you try to force closeness, what you're really saying is, I need you to meet my emotional timing, not yours. And to an avoidant person, that feels like a setup. They've learned, often unconsciously, that if they move too fast, they'll be swallowed. That if they let someone too close too soon, they'll lose control. And so they test the waters slowly. They open bit by bit. And every time you respect that process without trying to accelerate it, their trust in you deepens. Here's the irony: when you stop pushing, things often move faster. Not because you manipulated the situation, but because your respect for their boundaries actually lowers their defenses. When they sense that you're not keeping a scorecard, not getting frustrated every time they don't match your impulse speed, they begin to feel emotionally safer. And that safety becomes the foundation for real connection, the kind that doesn't burn out quickly, but builds slowly and lasts. But if you push too hard, too soon, you risk confirming what they fear most, that being close will cost them their freedom. That love comes with expectations they'll never be able to meet. And once that belief is activated, once they feel cornered or judged, they'll shut down, and it's much harder to get that trust back once it's broken. So take a breath, slow down, be steady, let them unfold in their own time. Love that's rooted in patience is the only kind that lasts with someone avoidant. It may not be fast, but it will be real, and that kind of connection, built on mutual respect, is worth every moment it takes. It's easy to fall in love with someone's potential, to look at them and see not just who they are now, but who they could become if they just opened up more, healed more, gave them more. And when you're in a relationship with someone avoidant, that temptation becomes even stronger. You see the flickers of warmth, the glimpses of connection, the occasional moments where the walls come down and your heart grabs onto those moments like proof of what could be. But if you're going to love someone avoidant in a way that doesn't damage both of you, you need to understand this: you have to love them where they are, not where you wish they'd be. When you love someone based on a future version of them, a version that's more emotionally available, more affectionate, more expressive, you're not really loving them. You're loving a projection. And that projection creates pressure whether you speak it out loud or not. They can feel it. Avoidant people are incredibly sensitive to subtle emotional expectations. They notice the tension in your silence, the disappointment behind your encouragement, the longing hidden in your smile. And all of that, even when it comes from a loving place, feels like a demand to be something they're not ready to be. Real love, the kind that builds safety, doesn't demand growth as a condition for connection. It meets someone where they are fully without needing to fast forward to a better, more emotionally fluent version of them. That doesn't mean settling for being mistreated or accepting behavior that hurts you. But it does mean learning the difference between healthy boundaries and emotional control. When your love says, I see you right here, right now, and I choose to stay present, you create a space where transformation can begin on their terms, not yours. Most avoidant individuals aren't resisting love because they don't want it. They're resisting because love to them has almost always come with a price. It's come with obligation, with guilt, with the expectation that they'll have to give more than they have capacity for. So when you show up with a heart full of love and a list of unspoken requirements, they pick up on that instantly. And it reinforces the very fear that keeps them at arm's length. But when you can shift out of that mindset, when you can genuinely embrace the reality of who they are today, something begins to soften. Your presence starts to feel less like pressure and more like peace. You stop trying to steer their growth and start offering something far more powerful, unconditional emotional respect. That doesn't mean ignoring your own needs. It means aligning your expectations with reality. It means being honest with yourself. Can I truly love this person as they are without needing them to be further along in their emotional journey to feel secure? Because if the answer is no, that's not a flaw, it's clarity. But if the answer is yes, then you have to commit to loving this version of them. They're not the one in your imagination, not the one you hope they become in 6 months. This version right here. Avoidants don't open up because someone believes in their potential. They open up when they feel emotionally safe, and that safety is built through acceptance, not expectation. It's built when they realize that your connection isn't conditional on performance or progress, when they feel that they can exist with you messy, flawed, distant at times, and still be loved, not fixed or managed. That's when the real transformation begins. So let go of the fantasy, drop the emotional checklist, look them in the eyes, meet them where they are, and love them there. That's not lowering your standards. That's raising your understanding. And for someone who spent their life dodging intimacy out of fear, that kind of love is the most healing thing you can offer. So if you've been loving someone who seems hard to reach, remember this, it's not about fixing them, it's about becoming the kind of presence they can feel safe around. Stay grounded, be patient, honor their pace, and meet them where they are not where you wish they'd be. That's how real connection is built. Not through pressure, but through presence. Not through healing them, but by being a space where they can heal themselves. Thank you for showing up with your heart open today, not just to understand someone else, but to grow into the kind of person who loves with strength, compassion, and deep emotional integrity.